Everyone thought solar panels would become more efficient and use less silver. The mainstream narrative, the one peddled by the bank analysts and the green energy optimists, was simple. As technology improves, we do more with less. We thrift the expensive metals away until they are a rounding error on the balance sheet. The engineering data for 2026 shows the exact opposite. The shift to TOPCon, tunnel oxide passivated contact, and heterojunction HJT cells is not just accelerating. It is becoming the industrial standard. And here is the dirty secret that isn't making the headlines on CNBC. These new high-efficiency cells use up to 50% more silver paste per unit than the old technology. We aren't just running out of supply, we are mathematically guaranteeing a shortage before the first shovel hits the ground in January. This is what we call the efficiency paradox. In the relentless pursuit of capturing more energy from the sun, the solar industry has inadvertently built a trap for itself. They have engineered a technology that is chemically addicted to silver. For the last decade, the solar industry was the swing buyer of silver. They took what was left over after the investors and the jewelry market were satisfied. But in 2026, they are no longer the swing buyer. They are the dominant predator. We are looking at a forecast where the photovoltaic sector alone consumes a percentage of global mining supply that borders on the impossible, approaching 20% to 35% of total demand rapidly. The sheer scale of installation, breaking records with 601 GW in 2024 alone, has set the stage for a consumption shock that the mining sector cannot match. Today, we are going to tear down the schematics of the TOPCon cell. We are going to look at the loading factors in milligrams. We are going to explain why thrifting, the idea that we can just use copper instead, is a physics-based lie that will not save them in time. And we will show you why the price of silver is about to detach from the paper markets and attach itself to the desperate, inelastic demand of the energy transition. The 2026 solar shock isn't coming. It's already being printed on the factory floors. To understand the magnitude of this crisis, you have to understand the death of the old standard. For the last 7 years, the solar market was dominated by a technology called PERC, passivated emitter and rear contact. It was the workhorse of the industry. It was cheap, it was reliable, and most importantly for the silver market, it was relatively efficient with its metal usage. A standard PERC cell uses roughly 10 milligrams of silver per watt of power produced. Over the years, engineers became very good at shaving that number down. They printed thinner lines, down to 13 microns. They optimized the paste. They thrifted the silver content to the absolute physical limit. But PERC has hit a wall. It has reached its theoretical efficiency limit of around 22% to 23%. You simply cannot squeeze any more electricity out of it. The physics of the silicon wafer won't allow it. Enter TOPCon. TOPCon is the new king. It pushes efficiency to 24%, 25%, and beyond. In the energy game, a 2% gain is massive. It means billions of dollars in extra power generation over the 30-year life of a solar farm. It lowers the LCOE, levelized cost of electricity, significantly. But that efficiency comes with a cost, a heavy metallic cost. Unlike PERC, which primarily uses silver on the front of the cell and aluminum on the back, TOPCon requires silver paste on both sides. It needs a silver grid on the front to catch the electrons, and a silver contact on the back to pass them through the tunnel oxide layer. The math is brutal. While a PERC cell uses 10 milligrams per watt, a TOPCon cell uses approximately 13 to 15 milligrams per watt. Some early iterations use even more. That doesn't sound like much until you multiply it by 500 gigawatts. Then there is HJT, heterojunction. This is the premium technology, the Ferrari of solar panels. HJT is even hungrier. HJT cells require low-temperature silver paste. Because HJT cells are sensitive to heat, they degrade above 200 warm. You cannot use the standard sintering process. You have to use a polymer-based paste that cures at lower temperatures. The problem? Low-temperature paste is less conductive than high-temperature fired paste. To get the same flow of electricity, you need to use more of it. HJT cells can consume up to 22 milligrams of silver per watt, more than double the old PERC standard. Now, look at the market share. In 2023, PERC was the majority. But entering 2026, PERC is being phased out. Factory after factory in China is retooling their lines to produce TOPCon. We are seeing market share projections for TOPCon reaching dominance in new installations globally. This means the average silver intensity of the entire global solar industry is rising. Usually, when a commodity gets expensive, industry uses less of it. That is basic economics. But here, we have a Giffen good scenario in technology. As the industry scales up, it is switching to a technology that requires more of the expensive input, not less. They are doing this because they have no choice. They are chasing efficiency. They are saving pennies on electricity generation by spending dollars on silver. This is the vampire effect. The new solar panels are sucking the lifeblood out of the silver market to feed the grid. The skeptics, the ones who are short silver, always have the same counter-argument. They say if silver gets too expensive, they will just switch to copper. It sounds logical. Copper is cheap, 4 lb versus 30 plus Oz for silver. Copper is conductive. Why wouldn't they switch? Well, let me explain the concept of technological inelasticity. Inelasticity means that the demand does not change when the price changes. You buy it because you must have it. The solar industry is trapped in silver because of oxidation. Silver is a noble metal. It does not easily corrode in oxygen. When you fire silver paste onto a silicon wafer at 750 degrees, it forms a perfect, stable electrical contact that lasts for decades. Copper is different. Copper loves oxygen. If you expose copper to air, it turns green. It corrodes. Inside a solar panel, corrosion is death. Replacing silver with copper in solar cells is a nightmare of chemistry. You cannot just print copper paste. If you do, the copper atoms will migrate into the silicon, a process called diffusion, and short-circuit the cell. It poisons the semiconductor. To use copper, you have to use a complex process called electroplating. You have to apply a masking layer, etch the silicon, apply a barrier layer, usually nickel, to stop the copper from touching the silicon, plate the copper, and cap it with silver or tin to stop oxidation. This is slow, this is expensive, and most importantly, it creates toxic chemical waste. Chinese manufacturers are running their factories at breakneck speeds, producing millions of cells per day. They use screen printing because it is fast, 1-2 seconds per cell. Copper plating takes minutes. It requires massive tanks of acid. It requires wastewater treatment plants. You cannot retool a global gigawatt-scale supply chain to use copper overnight. It requires new machinery, new environmental permits, and a complete redesign of the factory floor. We have seen press releases from companies claiming they have solved the copper problem, but look closely at the fine print. These are pilot projects. They are lab experiments achieving 23% efficiency, while mass-produced silver cells are hitting 25%. The industry is ramping up now. The factories are being built now for the 2026 production targets. They are equipped for silver screen printing, not copper plating. This means that for the next cycle, the critical 2026-2028 window, the industry is locked in. They are married to silver. If silver goes to $50, they buy it. If silver goes to $100, they buy it. If silver goes to $200, they buy it. Why? Because the silver paste is only about 10-15% of the total cost of the solar module. They can absorb a massive price hike in silver because the alternative is shutting down the factory. This is the definition of a squeeze. The buyer has deep pockets and no alternative. The seller, the mining industry, has no extra inventory. When you combine rising intensity, TOPCon, with inelastic demand, no copper substitution, you get a market that is primed for a violent repricing. Now let's look at the sheer scale of the demand. We've talked about the quality of the demand and so intensity. Now let's talk about the quantity and volume. The forecasts for global solar installations in 2026 are staggering. We saw records shatter in 2024 with 601 GW of installed capacity. The cumulative capacity is set to cross 2.2 terawatts by the beginning of 2025. Let's do the napkin math using the new TOPCon numbers. If we continue at this pace, installing roughly 600 to 700 gigawatts GW per year, and the average silver loading across the industry blends up to roughly 15 milligrams per watt, a conservative mix of PERC, TOPCon, and HJT. 600 billion watts multiplied by 15 milligrams equals 9 billion milligrams. That is 9,000 metric tons of silver. Let's convert that to troy ounces. 9,000 tons equals roughly 290 million ounces, just for one industry. Total global mine production is only about 813 to 835 million ounces. Think about that. One single sector, solar photovoltaics, is on track to consume nearly 35% of the entire global mining supply. This leaves 65% for everything else. For the electronics industry, which consumes massive amounts for semiconductors and EVs, for the medical industry, for brazing alloys, for jewelry, and finally, for investment. The investment market, the coins and bars you stack, usually absorbs the surplus. But in this scenario, there is no surplus. The solar industry is eating the surplus, and then it is eating the investment allotment. We are seeing forecasts that suggest the PV industry will continue to be the primary driver of the structural deficit, which has now persisted for 5 consecutive years. The shock will arrive sooner than the models predict. It will arrive in 2026 because that is when the TOPCon fabrication lines hit full capacity. China knows this. This is why we are seeing the Shanghai inventories draining. This is why the premiums in China are trading higher than the West. They are securing the physical metal because they control the solar manufacturing chain. They know that without silver, their energy dominance ends. We are watching a slow-motion collision between exponential industrial growth and geological stagnation. We have exposed the demand shock, the voracious, chemically addicted appetite of the new TOPCon solar cells. Now, we must turn our eyes to the other side of the ledger. We must talk about the supply cliff. If you ask a mainstream economist how to solve a silver shortage, they will give you a textbook answer. They will say, higher prices stimulate more production. They assume that if silver goes to $60, the miners will simply turn a dial, speed up the conveyor belts, and flood the market with new metal. But geology does not care about your economic textbooks, and politics does not care about your supply curves. We are currently tracking a structural decline in the world, as primary silver engines, Mexico and Peru. These two nations alone account for nearly 40% of global output. And the data coming out of their geological surveys is not just bad, it is terminal. First, let's look at the physics of the decline, ore grade decay. In the mining industry, we track a metric called head grade. This is the amount of silver found in every ton of rock you crush. 20 years ago, a decent silver mine might yield 400 to 500 grams of silver per ton of rock. It was rich, it was easy. Today, we are mining waste rock. We are scraping by on 100 grams, 80 grams or less. This creates an exponential energy problem. To get the same 1 million ounces of silver you got in 2005, you now have to dig up, crush, and process 4 to 5 times as much rock. You need 4 times the diesel, 4 times the water, 4 times the explosives. This drives the all-in sustaining cost, AISC, through the roof. But more importantly, it hits a physical limit. You cannot just run the ball mill faster. The infrastructure is maxed out. We are seeing forecasts that global mine production is set to remain flat or decline in 2025, stuck at roughly 813 to 835 million ounces. This is despite silver prices hitting record highs. The price is screaming produce more, but the geology is whispering we can't. There are no new monster mines coming online in 2026. Building a mine takes 10 years of permitting, environmental studies, and construction. You cannot build a mine in 6 months because the price of silver spiked on the COMEX. So, precisely at the moment when the solar industry is doubling its consumption, the geological supply is hitting a wall. This is not a temporary bottleneck. This is peak silver. The Silver Institute and other analysts confirm that 2025 marks the 5th consecutive year of a structural market deficit. Since 2021, the cumulative deficit has swelled to nearly 820 million ounces. We have been eating our seed corn. We have been filling this gap by draining the above-ground stockpiles, the vaults in London and New York. But those vaults are now flashing red. But the geology is only half the story. The other half is the regulatory strangulation. Mexico is the Saudi Arabia of silver. It has been the world's #1 producer for centuries. But under recent administrations, Mexico has declared war on the mining sector. We need to talk about the mining law reforms. The Mexican government has passed sweeping reforms that effectively decapitate the future of the industry. They have reduced the lifespan of mining concessions from 100 years down to 30 years. Imagine you are a foreign investor. You are asked to spend $500 million to build a mine that might take 10 years to permit and build. That leaves you only 20 years to recoup your investment before the government takes it back. The math doesn't work. The capital is fleeing. But the real kill shot is the open pit mining ban. Proposed constitutional reforms aim to prohibit open pit mining concessions entirely, citing environmental protection and water scarcity. Open pit mining accounts for 60% of Mexico's mining value. It is the only way to economically extract silver from low-grade deposits. If you ban open pits, you ban the majority of future silver production in Mexico. Existing mines are being grandfathered in, but they are facing death by 1,000 cuts. We are seeing delays in environmental permits. We are seeing new water restrictions in the arid northern states where the silver is located. This is a form of soft nationalization. They aren't sending in the army to seize the mines. They are just making it legally impossible for private companies to operate them. We are already seeing the casualties. Exploration budgets are being slashed. The pipeline of new projects in Mexico is frozen. No new concessions have been granted since 2018. This means that the supply response everyone is waiting for, the flood of new silver to cool down the price, is never coming. While the situation in Mexico is driven by regulatory headwinds, the situation in China is driven by long-term resource management. China is the world's largest refiner of silver. They process the door bars from around the world. Historically, they exported substantial amounts of refined silver to the global market, but market reports indicate a fundamental shift in trade policy. On October 30th, 2025, new frameworks for the export management of silver were issued, effectively reintroducing a quota system for 2026-2027. This mirrors the supply chain adjustments seen with gallium, germanium, and antimony. While officially framed as a measure to protect resources and the environment, industry analysts point to resource security as the primary driver. China produces over 80% of the world's solar panels. They know the TOPCon math better than anyone. They know that to maintain leadership in the green energy transition, they need roughly 200 million ounces of silver per year just for domestic manufacturing. Looking at the global deficit and the tightening supply in Latin America, the focus has shifted to internal allocation. Domestic silver stays domestic. Under the new licensing framework, priority is given to key industrial players. This effectively limits the flow of refined silver to international markets. This creates a bifurcated global market. Market A, the domestic market. Silver is secured to feed the industrial juggernaut, with prices managed to ensure factory continuity. Market B, the international market. The US, Europe, and India must compete for the remaining available float. The international supply contracts dramatically. This leaves global markets in a race to secure supply. Just recently, on November 14th, 2025, the United States Geological Survey, USGS, finally released its updated list, adding silver to the critical minerals designation. This is a legal game changer. For decades, silver was treated as a monetary or jewelry metal. Now, it is recognized as a strategic industrial asset. It acknowledges that without silver, key sectors cannot function. From advanced electronics to aerospace and defense systems, the metal is irreplaceable. When a mineral gets designated as critical, it opens the door for strategic stockpiling. Imagine if defense departments decide they need a strategic silver reserve of just 100 million ounces to guarantee future production. Where do they get it? They cannot source it from restricted markets. They cannot source it from mines that haven't been built yet. They have to buy it from the open market. So you have the defense sector, the solar industry, and the global investment public all chasing the same shrinking pie of available metal. This is the definition of a super spike setup. So how does this end? It ends with the failure of the paper pricing mechanism. For 40 years, the price of silver has been set on the COMEX in New York and the LBMA in London. It has been set by trading paper contracts, futures, options, ETFs, that are leveraged 100 to 1 against the physical metal. But in late 2025, we watched the price of silver shatter the $60 ceiling, hitting all-time highs of $64.20 in December. This wasn't a gradual climb. It was a violent repricing fueled by the realization that the physical metal is disappearing. We're already seeing the signs of decoupling. In China, silver has been trading at a significant premium to London for months, the famous Shanghai premium. This is the market telling us that the paper price is a lie. The real price is the price you pay to get the metal in Shanghai, not the price of a paper promise in London. As we enter 2026, we expect this decoupling to accelerate into the unobtainium phase. This is the phase where the spot price becomes a museum exhibit. It is a number on a screen that you cannot trade. If you are an industrial buyer, say a solar panel manufacturer in Germany, and you call the refinery to order 10 tons of silver, they will tell you, "We are sold out. Allocation is strict." If you offer to pay the spot price, they will laugh. You will have to pay the spot price plus a massive premium to secure delivery. We are seeing evidence that major industrial users are quietly signing offtake agreements with miners. They are buying the silver directly at the mine gate, bypassing the exchanges entirely. This shadow inventory never hits the COMEX. It lowers the visible inventory even further, creating a panic loop. The less silver people see in the vaults, the more they panic buy. The more they panic buy, the less silver is in the vaults. For the investor, this is the moment of truth. If you hold paper silver, ETFs that claim to hold metal but have pages of legal loopholes, you are at risk of being cash settled. When the exchange runs dry, they will declare force majeure. They will cite irregular market conditions, and they will send you a check for the cash value of your contract at the last trade. You will get your fiat currency back right at the moment it is losing value, and you will be unable to convert it into the metal because the physical price has doubled in the street market. You must own the asset, not the claim on the asset. To truly understand the violence of the coming move, we have to look at the behavior of the public. We are witnessing a phenomenon I call the recycling mirage. As silver prices broke through the $50 and $60 barriers in late 2025, the Western retail investor did exactly what the banks hoped they would do. They sold. We are seeing massive liquidations of grandma's silver. Sterling flatware, old jewelry, and even generic bullion rounds are flooding back into the refineries. The average American investor sees the high price as an exit liquidity event. They are thinking in terms of fiat profits. They are trading a strategic asset for a depreciating currency because they think the price is high. This creates a temporary illusion of supply. The recycling numbers for 2024 surged by nearly 24%, hitting 193 million ounces, a 12-year high. This flood of scrap metal has acted as a temporary dam. It has kept the industrial shortage from becoming an immediate catastrophe. It has allowed the COMEX to limp along for one more year. But here's the trap. Scrap is finite. You can only sell grandma's tea set once. You can only melt down the family silver once. Once that silver is melted down, refined into 999 grains, and shipped to a solar factory in China to become a TOPCon cell, it is gone forever. It is consumed. It is locked into a glass panel for 30 years. It will not come back to the market in 2027. The West is effectively dishoarding its centuries-old accumulation of private wealth to feed the industrial furnace of the East. While the U.S. retail market liquidates, the Indian and Chinese markets are doing the exact opposite. They are buying the dips. They are paying premiums. India imported a staggering amount of silver in 2024 and 2025, often exceeding thousands of tons to meet local demand. They are draining the London vaults. They treat silver not as a trade, but as generational wealth. This transfer of physical metal from Western weak hands to Eastern strong hands is the final stage of the setup. When the scrap supply runs dry, which our models predict will happen by mid-2026, there will be no buffer left. The recycling mirage will evaporate, the dam will break, and the industrial buyers will be staring into an empty vault. We are now entering the phase of the shadow market. This happens when the official exchange price, the spot price you see on CNBC, loses its legitimacy. It becomes a reference number, not a clearing price. We saw the precursors to this in December 2025 when the silver price touched $64. The market showed signs of extreme stress, with borrowing costs in London rising, indicating genuine delivery stress. In 2026, we expect the silver market to bifurcate completely. Tier 1, the paper market. This is the casino. This is where high-frequency trading algorithms buy and sell futures contracts. The price might settle at $65 or to $70, but, and this is the critical part, if you try to take delivery of 5,000 ounces at that price, you will be met with walls. You will face force majeure clauses. You will be offered cash settlements. You will face 6-month delivery delays. Tier 2, the shadow market. This is the real market. This is where Apple, Samsung, Tesla, and the Chinese solar giants trade. They don't buy futures contracts. They buy physical metal directly from the refinery gates. In the shadow market, the price is not $65, it is $65 plus a $20 premium, plus a shipping surcharge, plus a guaranteed delivery fee. The Shanghai Premium is the public face of this shadow market, but the private face is the offtake agreement. We are seeing evidence that major industrial users are quietly signing long-term contracts with miners to buy their entire production before it ever hits the open market. If a miner in Peru signs a deal to sell 100% of their silver to a Chinese solar conglomerate, that silver essentially vanishes from the global pool. It never reaches the LBMA. It never reaches the COMEX. It becomes shadow inventory. This is why the official inventory numbers are dropping so fast. The metal isn't just being bought, it is being intercepted. For the retail investor, this is the most dangerous environment possible. You might look at your screen and think, I can buy silver for $65. But when you call your dealer, they will tell you they are sold out. Or they will quote you $90. The spot price becomes a museum exhibit, a relic of a time when the market was liquid. The real price is what you have to pay to get the metal in your hand. And in 2026, that price is discovering a new stratosphere. I have warned you about this before. But in the context of the 2026 solar shock, it bears repeating. We need to perform a forensic audit of your silver ownership. If you do not hold the metal, you do not own the silver. Many of you holding silver in your brokerage accounts or in digital banking apps are actually holding unallocated silver. What does unallocated mean legally? It means you are an unsecured creditor to the bank. You do not own specific bars with specific serial numbers. You have a claim on a pool of metal that the bank manages. Here is the dirty secret. The bank is allowed to use that pool of metal for other things. They can lease it out. They can use it as collateral for other trades. This is called rehypothecation. In a normal market, this works fine. The music plays and the chairs are always there. But in a shadow market liquidity crisis, the exact scenario we are predicting for 2026, this is fatal. When the industrial users, the ones who need the metal to keep their factories running, start draining the physical supply, the banks will be left holding the paper bag. They will have sold 100 paper ounces for every 1 physical ounce in the vault. When the run on the bank starts, the unallocated holders will be cash settled. Read the fine print of your user agreement. Look for the force majeure, or liquidity event clause. It states that the custodian reserves the right to close your position and send you a check for the value of the metal at the time of closure. You will get a check for the paper price, $65, while the real metal trades at a 50% premium, 100 plus, in the physical market. You will be paid out in depreciating currency precisely when you need the hard asset the most. This is the bail-in risk. The only safe position in 2026 is allocated, segregated, and insured, or better yet, in your own personal possession. The smart money has already moved. We tracked the outflows from the London vaults throughout 2024 and 2025. That metal didn't disappear. It moved into private allocated storage. It moved into strong hands. The dumb money is still playing the ETF game, unaware that the ETF is just a tracking vehicle for a price that is becoming fictitious. So, where do we stand as we enter the critical window of 2026? Let's summarize the intelligence briefing. The industrial vortex. The solar industry, driven by TOPCon tech, is now consuming 20% to 35% of global supply. This demand is inelastic. They will pay any price because without silver, their factories close. Check. The supply paralysis. Mine production is flat. Mexican mining laws have banned open pits, ensuring no new supply response. Check. The geopolitical wall. China has locked the gates with export quotas for 2026. The US has declared silver a critical mineral. The market has fractured into East versus West. Check. The retail capitulation. Western investors are selling their scrap into the rally, temporarily masking the shortage. When this scrap dries up in mid-2026, the buffer is gone. Check. The price decoupling. The paper price and the physical price are separating. The shadow market is taking over. Check. This is the end of the cheap silver era. We are watching the revaluation of a strategic asset that has been suppressed for decades. The physics of the energy transition are finally overpowering the paper games of the financial sector. You have the data. You have the engineering schematics. You have the geopolitical maps. The window to position yourself ahead of the industrial panic is closing. When the headlines finally admit that the vaults are empty, it will be too late. Do not look at the price. Look at the ounces. This is the monetary shadow. We watch the flows, we count the ounces. And the countdown to 2026 has begun.